Hey everybody.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining me, I guess. So this week at the Enneagram Dignity Project, we are featuring nines. And I just thought, since I have some of my favorite people in the whole world are nines, that I couldn't miss this opportunity to chat around with my favorite people about being a nine. So I brought the three of you together. So why don't we just start with a little introduction, like your
Dave.
name. You can just say
I'm your husband, Karen's husband.
whose husband?
Yeah. Yeah, your husband. So, I mean, I think as far as being a nine, I don't know. It's the only one that made sense to me when I read the descriptions. I don't know how else to say it. It just kind of fit. So I'm a nine with a one wing, and I'm self-preservation nine, which I'm sure I'll talk about a lot, which has come out a lot during the pandemic, all my self-preservation tendencies. So yeah, I would just say as far as knowing if I was a nine, it just always made sense. And when I read it, it just fit in my personality and my relationships at work, my relationships at home, how I can just totally disengage and check out in a snap of a finger and then reemerge. So yeah, it just always fit, I would say.
My name is Mary. I am Karen's sister, and I am also a nine, obviously, since I'm here. Karen always jokes that I'm a nine with a nine wing, because I'm the niniest nine that ever nined. But I can definitely tap into to both the 8 and the 1, kind of depending on what's going on. I've heard nines do that better than other numbers do. I'm a social 9, which also I'm sure we'll talk about, and the differences between me and Dave in that regard are a lot. And I kind of similarly to Dave, 9 just sounded right to me. When I test kind of all over the place. That's why I know the paper tests are not necessarily the best thing in the world. I think especially because of my tendency to merge and to think things sound really great, even when, or like wishful thinking, or like even self-deprecating thinking, like, I'm like, oh, that's probably me. But then I'm like, so the 9s made the most sense for me. I think I'm a middle child, and a lot of the 9iness of me, I always sort of equated to my middle childness. And it's been a really fascinating, I don't think all middle children are 9s by any means, but for me, some of my 9 tendencies really, as I've looked back on my childhood, and Karin and I have talked about it together, I think some of my middle child stuff was because of my being a 9. So it just makes a lot of sense to me as well.
I'm Steve. I am the cousin of Karin and Marianne, and I'm a 9. For me, when Karin got into the Enneagram and was sharing with me some of this stuff, I remember she originally thought that I was possibly a 7, because I was like into surfing and music, and kind of I have taken some like big leaps in my life. But I remember one conversation in particular where we were sitting on the patio at my parents' house, and all the cousins were talking about numbers, and it really got into what's our motivation, what's driving us. And it just clicked so much that what I'm about is looking for stability, predictability in my life. I like routines. I like things to be, I like to find systems for things that work, that I can replicate, to be comfortable. I like that feeling. So I just kind of look at my life in a lot of ways as just kind of working towards that, trying to find a nice stableness to everything. That would be my kind of goal in life.
Yeah.
And like Marianne, I'm also a middle child, and we really relate to the middle child stuff. So that I mean, and also the melting. So you say that, and immediately I'm like, yeah, that makes perfect sense. So.
When something changes, you kind of just get into the zone, and you just got to kind of do it. And that grief hits you later. Anger hits you later. Pain hits you later. Does anyone want to speak to that? It almost like there's not even room really initially for it. We say Dave operates on a 6-month delay. That's what we say.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. No, that's a really good. I think I just started feeling sad. Yeah, like I think the grief one's interesting. I think I probably just started feeling sad today about like Josh not being able to finish his 5th grade year. I'm not saying, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, oh, like that's, you know what I mean? It's like, but that was back in, March or whatever, it's like, so that's a good point, Steve. Both of you made some really good points. I haven't thought about this one as much, like the grief standpoint, but I will have moments where I just kind of feel out of it and sad, and I don't really know why. And my impulse is like, I got to get through this as quick as possible. And I think the other impulse I have is like, I got to make sure nobody knows that I'm feeling this right now. Like, I got to just get moving through this pretty quick. Or we'll talk about it, or it will come out
Karin
in
will
anger.
help you through it.
Yes, she will. But it'll come out in anger. Like, there's a really, like, I don't like getting, like, I can probably remember, there's like the times in my life where I've really lost it, I remember. And I always feel a lot of shame about those moments. And I feel like I really, I would let people down, let myself down. As a kid, I remember when I exploded. And I still remember those. And sometimes I feel bad about them to this day. I'm like, oh, really? Man, I really lost it. And it was like I was 8 years old. Like, it's fine. Like, everyone moved on.
I just want to ask, like, when you do these kinds of things with like 3 8s or 3 1s, like, does everyone experience what I'm experiencing, where you guys talk and it's just like everything that I like, everything. This stuff about like being a kid and doing something and feeling bad about it now, like, it's crazy. I totally go through that. It's just like everything you guys are saying, spot on.
I think something that really resonated with me. I will literally think about something that happened when I was 12 and still be upset about my role in it. Or like, I used to wait tables and I will think, gosh, I never took that person their drawn butter for their lobster. 10 years ago, I will think about it to this day. Or like, forget like obviously like all the anger stuff too, but just like anything, I will think about it.
First. So when a 9 gets to the place of like, hey, I do matter, right? Which is the childhood wound of the 9. Like, my presence doesn't really matter, like, I could kind of come or go. I can blend, right? So once a 9 really moves into that of like, no, I actually have something and I can contribute. And actually, I'm pretty good at getting stuff done because people hear me. And 2 of the things that I just heard you all mention are huge in that. And one of them is just perspective taking. Like, you can look at somebody who you totally disagree with sometimes and hear them and still say like, no, I don't really agree with you, but they can walk away thinking, well, that was kind of pleasant still. Like, you have a way sometimes of communicating clearly, even when you're still being kind of diplomatic. And 2, Stevie, you really touched on this. 9s can be known a little bit for their unsentimentality.
Oh gosh, that,
like, I'm done.
Ooh.
I'm done. Right?
Yeah.
I'm moving on from that old agenda that didn't work. That castle built on sand. I'm
like, how I just get rid of everything all the time.
Oh my gosh, Karin, I've told my kids, I'm like, guys, I will say to my kids, your room looks awful and you have 15 minutes to clean up. And if I come back in, I'm not sentimental. I will throw stuff away. I have said that numerous times.
Expectation. So every number has kind of like a predictable expectation, and the predictable expectation of the 9 is that everyone sees all sides to everything. That everyone gets that there's not just one way, there's not just one side, and the remembering then is that that's not true, that other people don't walk through the world that way. But I think there's something really good for 9s to honor their own experience, to say, hey, that stinks. Like, you're not seeing my perspective at all. And I spend a lot of time trying to see your perspective. Like, I think that's actually really grounding for you to say, like, I really would like you to take my perspective a little bit here. That's like you not just losing yourself, right? That's you kind of staying true to yourself and kind of acknowledging that you're giving a lot.
So it definitely, and the Enneagram has helped me immensely with that. I used to spend so much time being just so frustrated that I couldn't make myself act a certain way or be more like the way my brother and sister are. And I thought that I was like defective in some ways because I couldn't get that same level of intensity about things, or like the same anything. And I think I always joke that I want to, like, there's like a perspective I feel like is missing out there, but like I feel like there's so much like rah, 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 you can be anything, you can do anything, you can just set your mind to it and do it. But that's doing such a disservice to so many people. At least it is to me. I have read so many self-helpy, encouraging type books that leave me encouraged for a few minutes. And then when like I just can't make myself do it right, I feel really terrible about myself again. And so like there's been this real awakening for me to just understand that like it just looks different for me. Or like getting myself, like I have many situations where I channel that 3 and I get moving and I'm achieving and I'm doing all of that. But it just looks different. And I can't let myself get upset when I don't follow it exactly the way that the self-help book tells me that I should. And that has been just really eye-opening for me. And
one thing I've been grappling with a lot is like, and we've all thought about it, I'm sure, different ways, just like how privileged my life has been. Like, I'm a 6'4" white guy who's had a pretty great life, and largely I think those stuff that plays into it. And I think I probably have had a lot more space to figure out along the way who I am, and have been given a lot more breaks and a lot more freedom to make mistakes, and given a lot more the benefit of the doubt. And so it's interesting. Like, I've never thought about that a lot, of like kind of finding out who I am, because I don't know. That's like, I just think it's been sort of a privileged piece probably in my life of just like, I've just had the luxury and given the benefit out to probably figure that out a lot along the way. And,
love you well as a type 9. Like, what could we do? How can we love? How can I love all 3 of you? So I guess I can say, how can I love you better as a type 9? What means a lot to you? What speaks to you when people are really showing up for you?
The first thing that came to mind was discomfort at even answering that question. But then the word that popped in my head that really fits is like patience. Being patient with us. It takes us a while to figure things out. I know there's times when people will want us to maybe show up a little earlier, but it takes a little while. So just being patient with us is a really super caring, I get you, way of showing that.
I agree with that. I would say totally that. And just even more specifically, like, there are some things that are really hard for me to do, and it's dumb that they're really hard for me to do. And so if I and this is a fight with my husband sometimes, like, making some dumb phone call to do something that takes 5 seconds, but I have such anxiety about it. And he loves the phone. So I'm like, you know how awesome it would just be if you just call and do this? Because it's easy for you. And like, he just thinks to me, he like wants me to just like push through and do it. But it's like, yeah, sure, I know I can, but like, just do it. Like, do that for me. Do this dumb thing. And that's something that, because you know, Karin is very aware of all this stuff. Like, she does that for me all the time. We were recently hanging out together and we were trying to figure out takeout food to order. I genuinely said, I don't care. And she goes, Mary, this is really a time where you really don't care and you want me to pick. And I was like, yes. And she picked. And then we realized you could not order online. And she goes, I will make the phone call. And I was like, thank you and I love you. And like, it was just something so stupid, but she does that for me all the time because she knows that like something that's so dumb to some people is a big deal to me. And I appreciate it so much when somebody can just like do it, take that dumb task off my plate. Sure, I feel a little bit of like, oh yay, I did it once I do something, but like not enough to make the anxiety of that situation worth it.
Like what you're both speaking to, that's so great. Like the patience piece of just like the time, like can value me and my pace instead of feeling like my pace is always behind, which I think is so great. And Mare, like, yeah, there might be times where that could lead to patterns of avoidance for a type 9 of like never making any calls, letting things fester.
Sure.
And that's a different story. But it's also like, yeah, I don't care. This isn't one of those, this is the turning point for your life, Mare. You pick up this phone and you call this takeout. And I love that idea of like, we can love you well by just like doing some of those things.
Yeah.
Like
I relate to that. I mean, so like it leaks a little bit because I'm like big on like the acts of service. Like when people do acts of service for me, it's like when I come home and like someone did a chore around the house that I normally do, it's like, I don't even think I can describe how wonderful it feels inside, right? If I come home, it's like one day I'll just share a story because it was like, I mean, it's about Josh because Josh that day, like 2 weeks ago, we are going to go to the beach and I'm planning my weekend. I'm like, I need to cut the grass before I go. I'm like, gosh, it's going to be like, when I come home from work, cut the grass. I'm like gearing myself up all day. I asked Josh to cut part of the lawn. I'm like, I'm not expecting anything. And I came home, the whole lawn was mowed. Josh like got a riding mower from him and his buddy did and when I pulled up to the house, I felt like I felt so loved by Josh that he like did this. It was like I felt so wonderful.
Opportunities to deepen their compassion and understanding for people. And I think that's done mostly through relationship. So for us to be able to relate to each other and people that I love and care about so dearly. So thank you all for doing this. And I will just tell you that I am who I am because of the 9s in my life. You give me space to be who I am. I don't ever feel pressured to be somebody other than I am with all 3 of you. So thank you for that. Love you.
Love you guys.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.